Union Minister Hardeep Singh Puri with us. So thank you so much for joining us. Like I said, the Prime Minister literally taking the fight to the opposition camp.
Ma'am, let me first of all congratulate you. I believe you got the Prime Minister for an hour and a half with your senior editorial personnel, and you were able to get his views straight from him, the views on the burning issue straight from him on a variety of subjects. So first of all, congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
Insofar as your question is concerned and the focus now on what is being sought to be built as the narrative, as the Congress party is on the one hand saying, and what is the reality? Look, the reality on our side is very clear. The reality on our side is that the Modi decade so far and the next 5 years is about taking the benefits of development, goods and services down to the last person. Whether it is the most vulnerable street vendor, whether it's building 11 crore toilets, 4 crore homes under Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana with a promise of another 3 crores, raising the benefits under the Ayushman, or raising the benefits of a scheme for 10 lakhs to 20 lakhs for the entitled categories. Look, there are two things involved. The Congress against that, against this saturation in the development canvas, they are talking about something which to me appears at the very least irresponsible. Let me tell you why. Mr. Gandhi says, or rather his manifesto says in this case, that they will give 1 lakh rupees, which is 100,000 rupees, to one woman in every household. Now, let me be the student of the numbers. In our scheme, Ujjwala, we have been able to give 32 crore 28 lakh Ujjwala connections. So I'm presuming those are the kind of households which would qualify, no matter what criteria you fix. If you give 1 lakh rupees to one lady or daughter, sister in that house, it becomes 32 lakh crores. Madam, I ask you, what is the total expenditure revenue of the government? It's only 35 lakh crores. So is Mr. Gandhi and the Congress party trying to suggest that this will be the only expenditure that the government will incur? Everything else will stop being spent, number one. Number two, if you take it away from this unrealistic, frivolous, empty promise, you go to what they have been saying. His mentor, if I may call it that, Professor Sam Petroda, is talking about inheritance tax. In his speech on 6th April, I heard the young leaders say that if we come to power, I means Mr. Gandhi will do an X-ray, find out where the wealth is, and then fatafat, it will be redistributed. Now, tell me, why would anybody earn if their money is not going to be with them, or they cannot enjoy the comfort which hard work and some resources can provide, and it's going to be redistributed to somebody else? I think this stems from a flawed thinking, a DNA which is heavily influenced. His great-grandfather was influenced by the socialists, I know that, but that is understandable. Those were the days of the Second World War, pre-independence India, Harold Lasky, the British socialist movement. But I think by the time his mother became a political force and you had the National Advisory Council, it was full of all kinds of leftists. Many of them are my friends. But the kind of things that they were coming up with. And today, this talk about the previous Prime Minister's statements are being resurrected for good reason. He says that the minorities, particularly the Muslim minority amongst them, must have first claim to the resources of the country. Now tell me, when you raise the resources of any country, quite apart from the fact that I'm a Sikh, he's a Sikh, I would have said, Uncle, wo hamare poor garib Sikhon ka kya hua? We're a much smaller percentage. I'm not getting into that. But why do you work hard? Why do your startups want to generate ideas and resources if it's going to be taken away by somebody? Do you know the kind of taxation we had in Mrs. Gandhi's time? I used to have a chart in front of me, 97%. In other words, if you earned above a particular amount of money, out of that, 97% was going to be taken away by the state. But, there's also a little bit of hypocrisy involved in this. When it came to them inheriting some princely amount of $1,73,000, or was it pounds, he abolished the inheritance system. So I think we have two models which we are confronting. We are not facing, we are confronting. These are choices. One is the Modi saturation model, second largest metro system in the world very soon, 945 kilometers already operational, another 950 plus kilometers going to be built. It will be the second largest in the world, bigger than the United States. We have 4 crore Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. You're going to have another 3 crores. All the rights, or rather the titles, will be in the name of the ladies of the house, 71, 72%, exclusively in the name of the lady of the house, balance co-jointly. All right? Then you have, now this is very interesting, take the rural areas. Right. Now, in the Congress period, the benefits of the gas cylinder never went to the rural area. Today, if I'm not mistaken, out of the Ujjwala scheme, 80% is in the rural areas. Now, what has the rural area got apart from rural roads? Water in every vicinity, electricity in every village, cooking gas in every village. That is the transformation. And believe me, that is the real India. When people talk in terms of the 21st century being the Asian century, now there is a switch. They talk in terms of the 21st century being the Indian century. So, not surprise, no surprise, you've come from being the 10th largest economy in the world to the 5th largest, and the next 5 years, within about 2 or 3 years of the next term of the Honorable Prime Minister-led BJP government, you will have a situation where India could, with reasonable expectation, be expected, and it is firmly believed it will be amongst the top 3 economies in the world. Why am I saying this? Look, I don't want any drama around this. You are the 5th largest economy, the 2 economies ahead of you, Germany and Japan. If you look at their rate of growth, they're growing at either flat or just 1% or so per quarter. And against that, India, Bharat's growth has been 8.6% in the last quarter. So even if you take the most conservative of estimates, the ones which are cynical, they put you at over 7%. So if you are growing at 7% at this rate, and the 2 economies slightly ahead of you are flat, or they have demographic problems, aging population, it is reasonable to expect that Bharat will be amongst the top 3 performing economies, GDP-wise, in the world within the next 2 or 3 years.
So you very beautifully contrasted the 2 economic programs of the 2 government, but there's also a foreign policy angle to how Prime Minister Modi's government is thinking of the next 5 years. And since it's your domain, Prime Minister is very clear that our national interest comes first. If in our domain of foreign policy we are keeping our national interest first, why should we be criticized?
Madam, let me start by saying it was my domain. I spent 39 years in the Indian Foreign Service. I was a very proud member of the Foreign Service. Still am very proud of the Foreign Service. But that's not my portfolio. But since you choose to ask that, even though it rightfully is an issue, turf of my colleague, but I'm happy to answer it. Look, I think that one distinguishing feature of the Modi decade has been the clear emphasis on India first. And I think you find that translated into the foreign security policy, you find that translated into the foreign economic policy, you find that translated into the domestic production processes, your external thing. We've not closed or turned our backs to the wall. In fact, the Indian Atmanirbharta story is a fascinating one. Sometimes we miss the nuance. The nuance is we make in India for the world. So you have gone from virtually only importing iPhones to what? Doing billions of dollars of production and export. Your defense exports have gone up to what? $16 billion or something like that. If you look at your automobile industry, okay, which is not only booming here, but you are now a player in the global market. I can go across the sector. But I think what I said, the distinguishing feature is India first. Anything that has to do with foreign policy, whether it's those who are casting a covetous eye on our territory and our assets, or those who are, trying to destabilize us through cross-border terrorism, I think the Modi message is a very clear one. Don't mess with us. And that will require some transition. Some people will be upset. But that invariably happens when you have a confident leadership and a strong and resilient country, which that confident leader is heading. And that also shows you the trajectory, that don't mess with us. People who have done that in the past have had to pay a price. And I think the message is, do that again, and you'll pay an even higher price.
Do you agree with that criticism at all? Some critics have said that the foreign policy of Modi government seems to be focusing on domestic gains and at that cost, ruining friendship with our neighbors.
No. Wait a minute. First of all, start by saying that home is important, domestic scene is important, neighborhood is extremely important, but you are also dealing with the rest of the world. Now, how will the rest of the world respect you if in your own backyard or in your own neighborhood you have people encouraging cross-border terrorism? I think that's the point. And I think the critics, if I may say so, are the few, I would say, padhe likhe vidwan, who were beneficiaries of the previous system, who tried to put an ex post facto rationalization on what that government was doing. How can you accept a situation where a country chooses to follow a policy of appeasement when somebody is practicing cross-border terrorism? नहीं, terrorism तो है, पर हम उनके साथ बात करेंगे. क्या बात करोगे भाई? That country was trying to question your existence. Today that country is falling apart. Falling apart means they don't have electricity, they close their lights at 8 p.m., they're a basket case, periodically people come and give them handouts, etc. Contrast that with India. Two countries born from the womb of the same mother. In the year 1947, India is now a success story for the rest of the world, and that is a basket case, and people are very careful in dealing with them. Of course, we want them to be stable, we want them to survive, because if they collapse, we have to pick up the pieces.
Yes. But the one thing that the Prime Minister has also pointed out is that people in those countries, Pakistan, Afghanistan, you've been to Afghanistan, seen the condition in which the Sikhs there were, brought the holy book here to India on your head. So maybe you're the right person to answer this. Prime Minister is very clear. Citizenship Amendment Act is not going anywhere, whatever critics like Mamata Banerjee might say.
No, but that's a central law, isn't it? I mean, please correct me, it's a central law. Who's any state? What is any state going to do? And secondly, what do you want? Do you want your people to suffer there? I mean, the fact is there was a partition in 1947. Large demographic shifts took place. Now the poor people who remained behind, now you mentioned the Sikhs in Afghanistan. You know, there were attacks on the Gurudwara Sahib. That is when the Granth Sahib was brought, and I had the privilege of performing, paying my obeisance and carrying the Granth Sahib on arrival here, etc. But let me ask you another question. Some of these criticisms that they raise are not comprehensible. After all, there's not going to be criticism against one minority if that minority is not the minority there, but the majority community. Who are the people who are persecuted there? The Hindus, the Sikhs, the Jains, the Parsis. And for heaven's sake, what numbers are you dealing with? The Chief Minister of India, Delhi, who was enjoying state hospitality just now in Tihar, he was saying these guys will come and take their job. These kinds of refugees have come to seek refuge. They've brought their own wealth of ideas and their entrepreneurial spirits along. Wherever refugees go, they don't take away your jobs. These are not the kind of guys you are trying to hire. Please, and they're persecuted. And because they were persecuted, they will contribute to your well-being.
And since you mentioned the Delhi Chief Minister, this is another opposition's pet peeve. They're saying Bharatiya Janata Party has drafted in allies like central agencies of ED, CBI, NIA. Now even Election Commission is being accused.
No, ma'am, let me put something to you. I think the Prime Minister put it beautifully the other day. He said, look at the total number of ED cases, or the cases that ED pursues. Only 3% have any political bearing, number one. Number two, we don't go after them using the ED. Let me take the case of West Bengal. There was a recruitment scam. 24,000 people were illegally recruited. Those who should have been recruited were not recruited. 24,000 others were. Now the learned High Court has come up with a thing that all of them have to return their salaries with interest. Now, we didn't start this. Those poor teachers who were left out of this scam and who, because of the scam, didn't get job, they went to the High Court. The High Court ordered it. That's when the ED came in. Equally with Sandesh Khali. I mean, some atrocities took place there. The High Court decided that the state police was not neutral or impartial. That's when the central agency came. Now, as far as Mr. Kejriwal is concerned, was there a liquor scam or not? I don't want to give you my view because you may say I'm political now. But the learned judge of the Delhi High Court, she said, look, there are three issues involved. Kejriwal, the individual, Kejriwal, the chief minister, and Kejriwal, the convener of the Aam Aadmi Party. And said that Kejriwal, the convener of the Aam Aadmi Party, actually actively asked for kickbacks. Now, that was not a bail application. It was under Section 19 of the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Look, I don't want to go into this further because the court, the Honorable Supreme Court will be addressing it. But let me say two things. There was a liquor scam. That has been proved beyond doubt. The ED sent summons to this gentleman on 9 occasions. It's only on the 9th occasion when he did not respond that he was taken into custody for questioning.
Since you mentioned Sandesh Khali, I have to put to you what the opposition is saying, that you mentioned Sandesh Khali, but why is the same concern not shown for women in Manipur? And the latest is what's happening in Hassan in Karnataka. Why is this selective outrage for women's rights?
Let me tell you, an atrocity, one atrocity is one atrocity too many. So I'm not going to justify it. But there is an entirely different dynamic there. What's happened in Manipur, I don't want to get into that. You'll have to give me your hospitality for a little longer. I'll be happy to. What's happening there in terms of ethnic issues, what's happening there in terms of cross-border filtration and resources, a court judgment. You know, I could have a long discussion on that. Okay. What's happening in Hassan, please, if some video has come to, let people, give them time, they'll react. And I'm sure that the BJP's line on this will be an absolutely crystal clear line. Right. Of course, it's not my call to take. I mean, the people concerned will be dealing with this.
And my final question to you, on the issue of appeasement and the question of reservation, there is this narrative that is being spread that if you come back to power, if Prime Minister comes back to power, reservation would go.
Ma'am, I'm so happy that you asked this question. Because this is not a narrative. This is a total falsehood. Falsehood saying BJP is talking about 400 because they want to amend the constitution. First of all, we've never said anything like that. Secondly, BJP wants to amend the constitution and take away the reservations of the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe and OBC. When did we say it? We've denied it. The Honorable Home Minister has denied it. But I'm very happy when this is not a false narrative. It's a total falsehood. It's an absolute outright lie. I was very happy that the RSS chief, you're right, he went and said that I've seen this around. I want to say categorically, the RSS has always been in favor of reservation, etc. That has actually nipped the mischief in the bud.